BioBalance Healthcast episode 166, treating symptoms of hormone imbalance.
BioBalance Healthcast features conversations about positive aging. Your hosts are Dr. Kathy Maupin, Medical Director of BioBalance Health and a leading expert in treating symptoms of aging, and Brett Newcomb, a licensed professional counselor.
Welcome to the BioBalance Healthcast. One of the things that Kathy and I have always done for as long as we've done these podcasts is invite your participation. And we let you know that if you have questions or comments about the things that we say on these podcasts, you can contact us directly at the websites. And from time to time people do, and in order to honor that process, we like to take some podcasts periodically and just answer some of their questions or respond to some of their comments. So today we have two women that have written to us, Pat and Melissa, with a description of their concerns. And Kathy's going to talk about if she were treating them, first of all, what the concerns as expressed by these women mean to her as a physician, and what her protocol for beginning to try to address the issues would be, what she would recommend. And of course, she's going to recommend that they go and find a physician in their area who practices this kind of medicine, and there is an organization to which she belongs that these doctors typically join, and you can find them through that organization as well.
AMMG. If you just look up AMMG.com on the internet, you'll find what the organization does. It's an age management medical group, and what they do and their members. And you can look for a member in your area, and they will most likely, and I can't promise, but most likely provide the same types of hormone replacement as I do.
Or at least be more sensitive to the issues that are of concern than, say, a traditional internist or gynecologist.
And usually have expertise in this area. So they would be somebody who you could give your questions to, like these women gave them to us, and they would then do testing, and I mean, the process is not as easy as, oh, here's a history, here's the answer. So I don't want you to think that I am giving you a solid, this is it answer. I have no lab. I only have your history.
Well, and that is part of your answer. You're going to say you need these labs to give this information to the physician in addition to your description of the symptoms.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But
the
it's
story is important, so that's why I'm going to have...
The story is important, and it's important for the physician to sit with this woman and observe her, interact with her, and hear her on all of his communication channels. You know, as much as communicated non-verbally is communicated verbally. And
I do a lot of physical exam without even touching a patient. Yeah. I watch how they walk in, how they walk into my office. I go to the waiting room to engage with them and bring them into my office, and I shake their hand. And I can tell if their hand's very cold, they're either very nervous or they have low thyroid. I look at their necks, or I make them uncover their necks to look to see if they have a goiter. I can tell about how their hair's grown.
She does this when patients come in. She also does it when we go out to lunch or something, and she's like, that person over there, they're not very fluid or mobile, they're ashen, they probably have a heart problem because they're gray. That person over there has a typical diabetic body. That person over there looks like they have a thyroid issue.
I can't stop.
Kathy, I'm trying to have lunch.
Yeah, so. I'm a little, I'm not obsessed, but it's always going through my mind. Yeah. Once you learn to observe people, it's hard to turn that off.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not a physical exam like listening to your lungs and listening to your heart.
No.
Now, often I take a patient's pulse, because that tells me a lot, the quality and the bounding of the pulse, and also the rate, the heart rate, tells me a lot about their cardiovascular system and some of their hormonal imbalances. So oftentimes I'll do that, but rarely do I have anyone take their clothes off for me to look at them.
Yeah.
So it's usually by history.
Typically don't do that anymore.
I don't do that anymore. Yeah. In general, I don't need to, but if there are areas of concern, I do have them uncover those areas and look at them.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question from Pat says, "Hi, Dr. Maupin. I was searching online and came across you on a YouTube video and would like your help with some of my concerns. I'm a 56-year-old female that has had a complete hysterectomy at the age of 33. Why? Because I did not know any better, but that's water under the bridge. I've learned to live with my feeling about it. My question is this: how do I get some of me back? My skin is mushy. I can't lose weight no matter what. I have no sex drive. My vagina is very dry no matter what types of estrogen cream or pill I use or insert. I've been taking estrogen for a long time. I have no uterus or ovaries. However, I do have a yearly mammogram, and knock on wood, so far they've all been great. My doctors are all men, and they just don't get it. There are times when I know I am a bitch because of PMS. What can you suggest or tell me? Please email me back, which Kathy did, but we decided we would also share the question and Kathy's thoughts about this individual on the podcast.
She is a very common. She has a very common story, even though most women don't tell that story out loud, except in the doctor's office. And if they're brushed off or told that maybe they should see a psychiatrist, they never tell the story again. Mm-hmm. So in this manner, it was very brave of Pat to tell her story. And for Pat, I can give her hope, because I've seen many thousands of women with this same story. They've had a hysterectomy for whatever reason, and I had a hysterectomy because I had to have one. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes that's a necessary thing. And
sure. And you perform them.
And I perform hysterectomies, and we'd always talk about whether to leave the ovaries or not.
Right.
But in the case of endometriosis, in the case of ovarian precancer or borderline cancer,
none of which we know whether this individual had.
We don't know why she had this.
Yeah.
But you have to take the ovaries. I mean, that's just part of it, and I knew that. I mean, and I expected it to be bad, but not as bad as it was.
Right.
And so she did not as well, and she's come to peace with not having ovaries, but she was 33. That's very young to lose your estrogen and your testosterone. So now she's in her 50s, and she's had a long-term both estrogen loss and testosterone loss. And I first like to separate the symptoms into what the symptoms that she's describing are from. And she's describing vaginal dryness, vaginal restriction or constriction, making the vaginal opening is very small now. Without estrogen and testosterone, it shrinks, it's dry, it cracks, it bleeds with intercourse, it can't be stretched without replacing estrogen or testosterone. So she's describing that, and that's mostly an estrogen. That's an estrogen
So that
component.
typically happens to older women as they lose their hormones. So you get the shrinkage and the dryness and cracking and the painful intercourse. But for a younger woman who's had a complete hysterectomy with ovary loss and no longer makes the hormones, it's the same as if she suddenly aged.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's a premature aging in that area, but it's also a premature aging in other areas, because she describes the things that she's concerned about. Her skin is hanging off, and it gets those little crinkly things in it that look crepey. That's what she's, I think, describing.
Crepey or creepy?
Crepey.
Crepey.
You know, crepe is kind of wrinkled.
It's an accent problem. I was raised in the South.
No, crepey. And that's a function of both estrogen and testosterone. Both of those hormones provide oil and elasticity, and they help all skin kind of stay on the connective tissue. So that is a matter of both estrogen and testosterone. So those two hormones are important. Mushy arms and legs, that has to do with testosterone. Mushy arms and legs are, you can't do that with your arm on your muscle. If you do that, your fingers sink in to the muscle, because all you have is fat now, and fat has infiltrated the muscle. Fat's on top of the muscle in a layer on top, and so the muscle feels soft. Blood flow stops going to the muscles and stops growing muscles and repairing them when testosterone drops. She's had this since she was 33. Most of us don't have this until we're 53. So she would have a much longer a longer time to become normal, maybe even a year, maybe in a year and a half after treatment.
So her recovery process wouldn't be immediate?
It would not.
Yeah.
It would not. And many people I see a year or so right after they lose their estrogen, they go through menopause, they lose their testosterone, and in a year, they're kind of back to normal. So this would
the
be
body
a
has to reset before it can improve?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And that's what she's looking forward to, but at least it's an answer, is when she replaces these two hormones and replaces them with a high enough dose. Now, one of the reasons the estrogen that she was given for the vagina didn't work is because, I don't know why, but estrogen that is given topically for the vagina is such a low dose. And they don't come out with higher doses. They keep coming out with lower doses, which I don't understand.
Is it because of the breast cancer scare?
It might be, but it's not related to breast cancer. Vaginal estrogen rarely even increases the level of estrogen in the blood at all. So it's just working locally. So you either rub cream around the outside and the inside, and that helps that tissue if that's the only complaint.
But you know, that's the challenge when people have some globalized informational perceptives. And if you do any research, if you do a Google search about estrogen and breast cancer, that's going to be in all caps. Oh my God, don't take estrogen.
Right, but that's been disproven. It's not the estrogen.
I understand that, but that is what many women and their loved ones reaction immediately is if somebody says the word estrogen
it's
replacement.
Fear, but it's fear that's been inlaid and been injected into them by media coverage.
Sure.
And by researchers and their global statements. It's hard to make a statement about your research unless you make a global one that's important so that people, or it's scary, so people will read it. So that's one of the motivations of people making those statements. Please read my article. I'm going to scare you first.
Right.
So that is not related to vaginal estrogen at all, because you don't get a blood level. In fact, your blood level is probably lower than you ever had it when you were younger. So
it's not a systemic dosage of estrogen.
No,
it's a topical dosage of estrogen, and a very low one.
Right, but she wasn't given enough.
Yeah.
And she wasn't given both hormones.
Can you get enough from cream?
You can't get enough for your body. You're not going to get enough for your from the prescriptions that are approved by the FDA, unless you bathed in them. You aren't going to get enough to have a systemic dose of estrogen.
I think I would have an estrogen soak.
No, well, it's funny. A long time ago, before I used pellets, I used testosterone in Vaseline, which is still, or in a carrier that brings the testosterone through the skin. It's topical. And I used it around the vagina, usually in the inner thigh, because it would cause hair growth. It was all I had at the time, and I gave that to my patients. And one of my patients called for a refill. She had a month's prescription after a week. And so we finally got to the point where we realized that she had used the whole month all over her body because it made her feel so good. And actually, all she did was just make hair all over her body. And she did feel good for a week, but so we changed the type of testosterone so that wouldn't happen again. Self-medication's probably not a good idea.
She didn't go running, screaming away from you, saying, oh my God.
No, she said, give me more, give me more. It made me feel so good because that was the only way she could get enough testosterone was to actually keep adding it. And in that way of giving it, that vehicle of giving testosterone, that was a little hard to get good blood levels and levels enough to make somebody feel normal.
Yeah.
But just say Pat needs just say she felt great, but she doesn't, and all she needed was the vaginal area. Then vaginal testosterone, or the external testosterone and vaginal estrogen would be the answer to that one problem. But would not systemically fix any of the other problems. Her skin on her body, or how she feels like she doesn't feel like herself, no libido. All of that has to be systemic estradiol and testosterone.
So the dryness and cracking and the painful intercourse would be improved just from the cream if she got enough dosage.
Right.
But the other issues that she complains about, and the causative reason for the dryness and cracking, wouldn't be addressed at all.
That's true.
So you're saying to her, don't be worried about the breast cancer issue with estrogen.
Yes.
You're saying to her, you can get a better dosage and focus on that particular response, which would make your relationship with your husband a little more comfortable for both of you, because at least there would be a non-painful sexual resolution.
But that doesn't mean she would have any gratification from the sex.
That's where I was going.
Doesn't mean she would have
desire, satisfaction,
any desire or libido, or even have orgasms, because it's difficult without having hormones to have an orgasm, which is, I doubt many men would have sex without orgasms. Not some do, but it's the payoff for everyone having sex.
So it's a question of what's your payoff and what's your hierarchy of payoffs. What are you looking for? And if you're just looking for a way to allow your husband to have sex so that you're not torn up and in pain, you can get that. But if you're looking for a way, as you said in your question, to get you back, then there's a better recommendation.
You systemically have to get your estrogen and testosterone back to a point where it's young, healthy levels. So the same level you had before your hysterectomy would be ideal for you now, but of course we didn't do a level. So we have to find out what's best for you. It's not an immediate fix. We don't go, oh, she needs a pellet that's 25 milligrams of estrogen and 200 milligrams of testosterone. I don't know that for sure. I don't know that without blood tests. I don't know that without...
Right, you can't prescribe or treat.
No, I'm not. I can't suggest.
And you're not. Yeah.
And I'm not doing that. But you can't, but the reason I do pellets is because it is the best way of giving both hormones. It is the safest way, and it's the least dependent on patients slathering it all over their body. I put it into under the skin. It lasts 4 months for women and 6 months for men, and then we are in control of the dose. So we can get the dose to where we want it without worrying about somebody not taking it or somebody overtaking it and getting side effects from that. So that's one way. Vaginal estrogen and testosterone are also a way to get both of those back, but it's a very up and down, day by day dose, and I don't suggest that. And creams and gels don't last long enough to give you a systemic dose in most people. There's a small percentage of people that can use those satisfactorily. I've never heard somebody with that say, I got my life back.
Yeah.
That's just, they don't get enough in their system
so
for that.
With the bioidentical pellets, what would be your response to her observation that there are times when she's really bitchy because she has PMS?
Well, she doesn't have menstrual periods, okay? And so most of the time when we don't have ovaries, we're not making too much estrogen. PMS is a mismatch between your estrogen level being high and your progesterone being low. Well, she most likely doesn't have any estrogen. So I'd say her PMS is really irritability and anger from not having any testosterone. Believe it or not, testosterone in most of us makes us calm and happy and not irritable and angry like everybody thinks. So I would give her testosterone to treat that one symptom because she doesn't have a high estrogen and a low progesterone. She has both low, so that would not be a PMS.
Right.
She just feels like it. She's felt like that before, and that's a matter of low testosterone.
And that may be what kind of feedback she's receiving from people that are not informed. You know, again, people make these sort of global labeling assumptions.
Oh, you act like you have
PMS. Her relatives. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of the other things she talked about was weight, and I don't use hormone replacement as a weight loss system, but I can assure you that if you don't replace your hormones after menopause, if you don't replace estradiol and testosterone, then you're not going to lose weight. You need that as your baseline to make you more normal like you were when you were younger and to improve your metabolism so you will be able to do the things you need to do to lose weight.
Right.
People come to me for just weight loss, and I'm like, that's not what we're doing here. We're replacing hormones to make you normal. Then weight loss will work.
Weight loss will become an option.
Right.
And
it is an
not
option.
within the first 3 to 4 months.
Absolutely, that's a great.
The first 3 to 4 months, your body has to restore itself and prepare itself to benefit from your optional choices. You know, so exercise and mobility and diet awareness and good life habits then can generate the beneficial outcome. But just the hormone replacement itself is not going to drop 20 pounds off of you.
No, but I did see 2 women this weekend when we go to Kansas City on a Friday, Saturday, so that we can see a third of our patients then. And those patients, I had 2 women come in, and one had lost 20 pounds and one 30. I didn't recognize them. That's why I do before pictures.
Yeah.
Before and after. But what they did was they got the hormones, and one of them had a high cortisol, which was making her gain weight as well. So I gave her a supplement that lowered a cortisol level, and I had all her lab back in front of me, and they all looked great. They were drastically improved. But she had already been exercising daily. I don't mean walking, I mean really exercising, or jog walking your dog or something. You have to sweat. You have to actually have your heart rate go up to lose weight. And she had already been on basically a Italian Mediterranean diet. Yeah. Fresh foods, and she the first was a CRNA, and I mean, she looked amazing. But it wasn't just because of the hormones. The hormones made it possible. And the second patient was a long distance runner, and she was running the whole time, but she couldn't lose weight, and she was eating properly and not starving herself and not eating too much. And She basically...
So she already had the habits that she needed to develop.
Right.
But they weren't paying the benefits because her hormones were out of balance.
Right. And then she got her hormones back and she lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. She was down to her ideal weight after 4 months. Now, that's not typical, but that is possible.
Yes.
And it's not just because of the hormone dose, so more hormone doesn't make that happen, but it has to do with lifestyle.
Yes.
And actually decreasing your anxiety that comes with feeling sick. And feeling better, decreasing your cortisol level.
So just to summarize then, the message to Pat would be, you're not getting enough estrogen from what you are doing. You need to find a way to increase that. You need to be aware that if you just do a topical application of a proper dose, you'll get some relief, but not of all the symptoms that you've described. So what you need to do is go see a physician, have some blood tests run, who specializes in this kind of work, have some blood tests run, consult with them about replacing your estrogen and your testosterone at viable or optimal levels, and then be prepared for 4 to 6 months of work on your part about changing your lifestyle habits, changing the way that you eat and exercise and think about yourself. But you will have mood improvement, you should have muscle tone, sleep improvement, and hopefully increase in libido and an ability to gratify that increase without pain and discomfort.
That's exactly what I'd like to say to you, and I'm open to see anyone who has these problems, but sometimes it's better to see someone. It's logistically
impossible for them to get here.
It's better to
Although
see
you do have people that come from all over the country and several foreign countries.
I do. So that's always possible, but that would be something that would be your option. But I wish you the best, and honestly, this is something that's so common. You should have an excellent outcome from this. And we're going to talk about Melissa's letter in the next podcast that we do. Don't want to overwhelm any of you with too much information in one podcast. So thank you for listening.
Email your questions or comments to podcast@biobalancehealth.com. You can find the BioBalance Healthcast on iTunes and on YouTube. For more information about bioidentical hormone pellet therapy and other reverse aging solutions, visit biobalancehealth.com or call 314-993-0963. You can find Dr. Maupin on Twitter @Dr. Kathy Maupin and on Facebook at facebook.com/biobalancehealth. Find Brett Newcomb at brettnewcomb.com.